Todd, what did the bikers say after riding the $1 million highway?
I don't know.
I feel like $1 million. Just don't ask about the gas prices. Our goal at Best Motorcycle Roads is to make your next motorcycle trip the best it can be. All right, today we're gonna kind of do a top 10 bucket list of all roads west of the Mississippi. I think there might be 12, but who's counting? There was too many good ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
So if we start out in Nevada, this is the road they call the Loneliest Road. And it runs from Nevada to Carson City and then to the Utah border. So if you think of that area. So it's kind of known mostly, I guess, for the scene in Forrest Gump when he stops running.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of that, it looks kind of up on a hill and you kind of look down. And that's kind of the iconic photo video shot is right there. So apparently Life magazine in 1986 dubbed this the loneliest road in America. And so that's why they call it that. And I think it's mostly just because it's literally out in the middle of nowhere.
Gotcha,
I mean, I think there's just not much going on there. So, you know, magazines do what they did and just make names for things. So
Right. No cell phone service, maybe.
Probably not. The interesting thing, though, is it's part of US 50, which actually runs from east to west coast or from coast to coast. So it starts in Ocean City, Maryland, and then all the way to Sacramento, California. So the reason it makes our best bucket list roads to me, I mean, I think it's just, it is kind of fun sometimes to come across those bucket list or roads that have been kind of iconic. So yeah, that would be a cool one to ride, I think. The next road I had on the list, Todd, is Ozarks Pig Trail. That would be Highway 23 in Arkansas. So northwest to north central, like Arkansas. Lots of trees, lots of tight curves and hills. And I actually think I've rode a portion of this. I think I looked on my Google timeline, and in 2017 we were in the neighborhood. I don't think we maybe rode the whole thing, but I think there was like three of us that paired off on one of our rides, and we went this way and went to it. So
I feel like I've been on the road in the car. I don't know that I've ridden the motorcycle there, but I think I've been on the part of the pig trail, yeah.
And it gets its name, I think, mostly because it's, you know, it kind of just iconically. You got Arkansas Razorbacks, those are pigs. It's got curly things. I think that's just kind of, or, you know, curly tails. So I think that's kind of why it's called that as well.
Yeah.
So then we go to a road, or a set of roads in this case, called the Three Sisters in Texas. So this would be Texas Hill Country, which is south and west of Dallas, a couple hundred miles. I don't know if you've ever heard of Hill Country there. They kind of call it Texas's Tail of the Dragon. So if you think about it, it's three sisters or three roads, RR 335, 336, and 337. And so I was curious about why RR, and so I looked it up. It's not a highway. In Texas, it's called a ranch road.
A ranch road. I was thinking rural route.
No, I know. That's Iowa.
Okay.
But if you can imagine kind of a pseudo figure eight where maybe a laid down B, that's kind of how these work. But because they kind of all intertwine these three roads with each other. So I've never been there. I would love to get to Hill Country, Texas sometime. You know, as with many of the roads that we'll talk about today, for us living in Iowa, this is probably the farthest we might be able to go on a trip.
On a 5-day trip.
On a 5-day. That's kind of our standard, you know, 5 days. But apparently each road kind of has its own character, but it's very Tail of the Dragon-esque. But,
yeah, this is one I've always heard of. That
I've heard a lot about.
People talk about
sisters.
this. Yeah, the Three Sisters roads, and like one has real tight curves. One is like real rugged landscapes.
And then just all the views. I think I've heard great things about Hill Country as well, and you know, of course, you have all the Texas things like cattle and, you know, kind of that kind of thing too.
You'll see ranchers out.
Yeah, I know that there is a boatload of wild boar out there, and that would not be something you want to hit.
No, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's something. If you're in that neighborhood, that would be something really. It would be fun to ride some of the iconic roads there. Our next road, which I think is
Black Hills.
Yes, and I believe it's 8-ish if we're counting, but my counting's not very good usually. So Black Hills and Badlands. So this is kind of a tough one to explain because I don't think there's a road here. So we're kind of talking a collection of roads. Of course, this is in the Black Hills, the Badlands. That's in western South Dakota. So very much iconic American scenery, I guess. I mean, this is a place where not only Sturgis happens every year, but I think people just come to this area. You know, Mount Rushmore, all these kind of, I don't know what you call it, Western kind of American. So the reason why the Black Hills are called that is it's pine, deep pine forests. So when you look at the hills, they look black because of all
dark green,
the pine. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then the Badlands, that name came from the Native American tribes, early settlers that basically describe this as, like, I don't know if you've seen the Badlands before.
Been there many times, yeah.
It would be one of those things where you could probably start walking for a long ways and pretty soon you'd end up on a dead end because it was so, like a cliff, you know, and so they said it's just terribly bad land to travel through. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how that goes. But there's a few places there I think that you'd want to see. Needles Highway is South Dakota 87. That is kind of a windy road that takes you through a lot of narrow tunnels that have been kind of taken out of the granite, and then just famously on that road, and then is the Needles Eye Tunnel, and then the Iron Creek Tunnel, and so those are if you watch any videos of this, you'll see where bikes are just lined up to go through a tunnel that's almost. Yeah. I mean, a car fits through, but barely. Like, sometimes you'll see these like tour buses driving through there, and they're like folding the mirrors in and the whole 9 yards there. So you've got the Needles Highway, and then Iron Mountain Road, and that one is another great one. More tunnels, and that's kind of the one. If you've ever seen the picture of someone looking through the tunnel, and then you can see Mount Rushmore through it, that's the Iron Mountain Road. So that's US 16A.
Been on that one many times.
Yeah. And then Crazy Horse Memorial, largest mountain carving. We've talked about that on other podcasts. Just a great landmark.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, Native American heritage and history. And then the last two pieces of this puzzle, I guess you would say, is Custer State Park. And so that's kind of when you see people getting stupid and walking and trying to pet a buffalo. That's what, or bison. That's what you find there.
Yeah. Every year, Custer State Park, it happens like the last Friday of September. They have the bison, or they call it the Buffalo Roundup.
Okay.
And it's where they bring the entire herd in, and then they bring them into pens so that they kind of sort them out. They
winterize them.
They kind of winterize them. Yeah. They do vaccinations. Yeah. They find out which ones are the new ones in the herd. They brand ones that need to be branded. They sell a lot because I think what they need to do is they need to keep the herd at a certain number, right around 1,300, 1,400,
okay, because
there's only so much grazing land in the park. So if you ever get out there the last Friday of September, it's quite a sight to see. And next year will be the 60th anniversary of that. Yeah,
I think a buddy of mine from someone goes out to that every year. He just really enjoys that.
Yeah, I had some friends that were just there. That's why I know a little bit about it. Yeah,
that's cool. And then just the Badlands National Park is part of that, and just such a dramatic. It is honestly like if you could not have it have the same color as everything else, it would look like the moon if you haven't seen it before. Just the most funky things standing in the air. So I know this last late summer I rode through there, and I'd never seen it before, and it was pretty amazing.
Cool.
The next interesting road, so this would be hopefully number 7 if my counting is correct, is Hells Canyon Scenic Byway, which, I mean, that alone is almost an oxymoron, right? Like Hells Canyon and Scenic. But this is right along the Oregon-Idaho border, and that follows the Snake River. So, and why would you want to ride this? It's really America's deepest canyon, which I had no idea. And again, I haven't seen this one yet, but I didn't realize that the Grand Canyon wasn't the deepest canyon.
Right. I always thought that that was the deepest, like a mile deep or something,
right,
wasn't it? Yeah.
So this is actually it's named because of Hell's Canyon, and that is carved by the Snake River, and that is deeper than the Grand Canyon. So, And this place just doesn't even look real. I think like one of the cool reasons you might want to go see there, it just doesn't look real. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me? Like, so I think it's, clearly not as grand as the Grand Canyon, but I think it clearly is deeper. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool.
I was thinking when you mentioned that, I remember in the 1970s watching Evel Knievel attempt.
I know, he
a
jumped the Snake River.
Snake River. He didn't make it, but
Maybe
cool.
we could try it next time we're out.
No.
No? It seems like a good idea.
yeah.
In Arizona, then, if we're one called Mount Lemmon Scenic Byway. So this would be near Tucson, sorry. So it's a wild ride, and they go through it's not a long ride, but it's 30 miles long, but goes through 5 different climate zones. And apparently this was named for a botanist from the 1880s who actually summited it on horseback. So with the ride going from desert to kind of alpine area, it's just one of the most scenic areas in Arizona. And as you know, in Arizona, there's quite it's desert, but there's so many different latitudes at times, which I think make it super interesting.
Altitudes?
That both.
Oh. Okay.
Both of those. Oh my gosh. And then we've got one, Highway 12, called Lolo Pass. And that's right on the Idaho-Montana border. I drove right by it, but didn't go to it when we went out west. But this is kind of cool because it follows along the path of Lewis and Clark, which is kind of an interesting little nugget. And the reason why it's called Lolo Pass, and this could get ugly here soon, but actually when French trappers were there, they were trying to call it, the pass was named Nuxlulchwo. And so somehow the French translated that into Lolo. So it just, I don't know, some of these places where Lewis and Clark have been to me just seem so interesting to think about. We drive over these roads and think, oh my gosh, this would be so difficult terrain, and then these people did it, no roads, no nothing. They were taking horses and canoes that were like stretched animal hide.
Yeah.
So another interesting road here. This is one that's out in Colorado. Number 5, the San Juan Skyway. So this goes through the San Juan Mountains in southwestern Colorado. They call it the San Juan Skyway, and it's really kind of just like a lot of this area. Have you been to this area of Colorado before in the southwest?
No, I haven't been down that far.
It's kind of like memory, or like history has kind of forgotten it. So it's kind of still pseudo Old West. It's in the San Juan Mountains, near towns of Ouray and Telluride is kind of the area. A lot of mining had been done in that area, kind of just Western movie-ish, and you're kind of looking back on the Rockies in that way. So yeah, a neat area out there. And then the next road we're talking about is Going to the Sun Road in Montana. That's near Glacier National Park. And it's just not only you're looking at glacier, which is just amazing. It's just a lot of waterfalls because everything's coming, the glaciers are coming down, and just big cliff hanging style
roads,
turns. Yeah. And Logan Pass, but named this because of the Going to the Sun Mountain. And one of the reasons why this would be cool, because you can cross the Continental Divide in that area. So the $1 Million Highway is also one we had on here, which is US 550 in Colorado. That's between Silverton and Ouray, Colorado. And I think this one's pretty much without guardrails. So you're kind of traversing the mountain without guardrails. So some say they named it because it cost $1 million per mile to build, and that's the story I'd heard. But also just $1 million views, as well. So,
well, I think Silverton too has that train that goes between Silverton and Durango.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I think that's there. That narrow gauge train, like 45-mile run.
Yeah,
and, you can take like day-long or 5-hour round trips on it for $100 or so.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's one of my bucket list things is to go ride that Durango Silverton train.
Yeah. Well, you could ride the motorcycle out.
There you go.
And then hang out and hit the train.
The 5 hour round trip train ride. Yep.
Then you could rest and
Then
drive
I'll
back.
rest. The next day, you know.
Oh. So our number 2 road bucket list for the West is Beartooth Highway, US 212. So sometimes you'll see a lot of pictures of Beartooth, and it has snow most of the year. Yeah. And it only opens for a few
weeks or months?
Months. Not even months. I think you're probably right. It's more like weeks. But that goes from Red Lodge, Montana, to then kind of the northeast entrance of Yellowstone. It's about almost 11,000 feet when you get up to the summit. So, and that's on Beartooth Mountain, and they call it that because of the mountain looks kind of like a tooth of a bear. But kind of the best part about it is when you get to that summit, you really have it's one of the highest points in that area. So you're really getting a 360 view of everything there. And then the road that we kind of have at the top or bottom, I don't know which one you say, of the bucket list.
Number 1.
Yeah. And it happens to be number 1, Todd, the Pacific Coast Highway, California 1. And every time you see anything, I think about a California motorcycle or convertible.
Convertible, yeah.
It's PC1. California Coast. It really just, that describes it, right? The Pacific Coast Highway just calls it. It's right along the Pacific, nonstop views of like ocean, coastline. It's just what you think of when they say that, you know, they're leaving town and we're getting out of here, and then you see them riding on a movie. You know, it's always that. And the big thing there is there's a big Bixby Creek Bridge, which is kind of, when you see that picture, I mean, everybody's seen it a million times, even if you didn't or not. So
I've driven in a car.
Oh, have you?
On Pacific Coast Highway 1. Unfortunately, it was really foggy that day. I think that's not uncommon. There's a lot of fog along the way. So while there were sometimes there were some great views, a lot of times it was just fog. You couldn't really see a whole lot.
Yeah, and so for me, I think getting to the Pacific Coast Highway, and I think for me, maybe the Three Sisters are the two that I would probably pick out as the ones that I'd kind of really try to look to do next. But what are your thoughts?
I want to go out to like Colorado west. You know, I've been out there in the car many, many times, and I just really want to ride those roads, and I want to get back to Crazy Horse, and so that's my big draw there. I want to go to Silverton. I want to ride the train there. So, yeah, I'm looking at Colorado maybe as my next bucket list item.
When I think of Colorado too, I think I'm driving out there, and they, like a lot of their 2-lane roads are all 65 mile an hour 2-lane roads, and when driving those in the car in the past, it's always felt like this was a road made for a motorcycle. Like, I think so much of Colorado's roads are like perfect for motorcycle riding, just because they're just tight but yet sweeping roads that just seem to go forever.
Yeah, elevation changes.
Oh.
Yeah. I'd like to get to Tombstone as well. It's been a while since I've been to Tombstone.
This is a section we call the toolkit. We share motorcycle gear review, and other riding tips. In the toolkit today, Todd, I thought, like, what better, you know, if it's a bucket list item, it's kind of the top of the pile, the thing that you want to kind of do. And, you know, like, I think we haphazardly plan some of our trips.
No.
And they work out fine because, like, we're just kind of letting it flow, you know. But I think when I thought about these trips, I think this is more than maybe even a 1-year plan, right? Maybe this is like a multi-year plan to get to really, like, what you would hate to do is get to a bucket list trip and then kind of feel like you kind of failed and didn't do your work. So what I put in the toolkit, or what I have, and I know you've got some items here too, but just great maps. I mean, like, I think you'd want to nail the maps on this one. You wouldn't want to try to figure it out as you go. Like, there's going to be certain things that you want to do. And then digging into some of these, there's some great books, some of the old National Geographic books of just guidebooks, route details, like, get a hold of local people, see what you can find, the hidden gems, because those are the things I think you don't want to miss when you're hitting some of these things. It's kind of probably a once in a lifetime trip. Like, I know if I get to the PC highway, it's going to be once, right?
Right.
You know, and I don't want to screw it up. So I want to make sure that, you know, you're hitting it at the right time of day, even if you want certain photographs. And like you said, like let's research that weather, make sure it's not foggy. Reduce the risk as much as possible. So that was a couple of things that I was thinking of.
Yeah, and I always recommend if you can check a couple of forums, like all the TripAdvisor type forums are great, but there's one specific to motorcycles.
Yeah.
Ask all those questions. What are the places that I have to see? What time do I need to see them? Anything I need to avoid or need to be warned about ahead of time? And then kind of like you just said, kind of understand that local weather, but they will have that information.
Right.
And if you know that there's going to be a possibility on Highway 1, fog, try and give yourself at least a few days there so you can catch at least 1 or 2 days without fog.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And I would also add now, because of, I think it was Hurricane Helene, some of these places, have weather. I know it's some in the south right now. You got to be sure
Yeah.
some roads have damaged. They've been closed. They've been, I know like this year was a year where some roads, they have construction. When you're getting out to some of these areas, summer is also some of the best time, especially when we talk about the Beartooth passes and these high elevation ones. They have a limited window to fix these roads. One example is we made a big loop around Custer and went through Custer because when we were out west this year in Sturgis, there was construction on the main highways. I mean, they were gravel. They turned them to gravel, and there's no options. There's just not enough roads. So just being thoughtful about that when you're planning, think ahead. Checking as much as you possibly can on that. You had mentioned it kind of just at the moment when I was talking about that extra weather, but looking out and really probably planning a little less than you would normally plan if we were going to do a cannonball run style thing. Like if this is a bucket list, let's build it a little extra time in. Like let's take one more extra day so we don't have to quite push so hard because there's going to be other things I think that you've seen that'll be good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then I think just the forums are, I have some older books from some of these travels and they're good, but they're also 5 years old now or more.
Out of date.
And so I think using those as a kind of a preliminary look and then hitting the forums and we're both part of Best Motorcycle Roads and Trips Facebook group. There's a couple great ones out there that people are so helpful and not all forums are helpful, but some of them are very helpful and they'll just give you great tips.
And I want to know the most current great places to eat
Exactly.
while I'm out there as well too.
Yeah, because post-COVID, a lot of places closed, and and so that's
so your 5-year-old book won't
it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
If you like today's podcast, please like and subscribe. Sign up for our BMR Rider Alerts. It's our way of keeping you in the loop, and we promise no spam.
Keep the spirit of adventure alive, and remember, friends, bikes, and endless roads, the stories ride forever. Take care.